this area we're going to focus in on the details. And what we want to get started with first is one of the darker colors, but still fairly warm. Let's try these kind of browny pink colors here. Let's start with this one and see how we do. I'm going to take a smaller brush. And what I want to do is I want to create the outline of the lids. So I want to really make sure that the shape of the eye is accurate. In the sketch, what I did was I kind of opened up this eyelid a little bit more because it was sagging just a little. And I really wanted her to be looking more at the viewer. So I changed that originally in the sketch, but if you want to do it exactly like the photo you have, that's fine. So basically all I'm doing is just outlining the lids so that we can bury the line later. Okay, so I'm just getting that dark in there to begin with. I may even give her a dark outside the iris. Okay. I'm going to merge these two here, soften that eyeliner line. Okay. Now that we have that done, I'm going to take my lighter colors and I'm going to start to really define these transitions. They're not really edges because everything is kind of a smooth curve into the next shape. And with these, I can be a little bit, it's a small brush, it's very transparent. I don't have to be very tedious in how I go around a form. I can be a little bit messy. It's just kind of, I don't like to be too focused on one thing too quickly. The detail will come as I go. Okay. So I'm just getting these lights in to really start to define the shape of the eye. You can see I almost completely buried this edge of the line. I'm going to come back in and redraw that just a little. And then I'm going to bury it again. You want to keep redefining, keep burying, and you're just continuing to build up color, build up texture, and build up layers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this little pink flesh that we have on our inner eye here. I want to get that in there. There's the basic color there. I also want the ridge of the lid, of the bottom lid, which is right there. The 13 might be too large. I'm going to try a 9, and I'm going to try my best to really get that in one swoop. So let's see if this is too light. I think that's okay. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, pretty good so far. Not one swoop, but good enough. There we go. It's easier if you're right-handed to go left to right. And again, we don't have to have this perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfectly solid line. It's okay if there's a little texture in there. We're going to put the eyelashes in over that. It's going to be fine. But we really just want to make sure that we have all the colors accurate. Okay, now that we have the bottom lid in there, we could probably add a little more color to it. Let's try something like this. And let's make sure the opacity is low. And let's just kind of dust over that. Give it a little more of a pink edge. I like that a lot better. Let's put a little color in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lighter, actually let's take this almost kind of a very light teal green and let's get that that highlight on that white of the eye there. Now again, this isn't white. You can see here that it's not white, it's a blue. Okay, but do you see how that starts to round the eye? That's what we want. Now this is almost a little too light to use in that corner, but we're going to use it anyway. And now what we have is we have a round eyeball. Let's get this center of the eye complete. Let's see. We're going to stick to the brown eye. Let's try this color here and see what we have. It's a little more red. We can raise the opacity and really get that filled in. This is a little bit red, but you know what? That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to start, even though you can't really see it here, I want to create the texture of an eye in this portrait. I really want it to go beyond the photograph, so I don't want to stick to whatever I see here. Right now, it's very flat. This one doesn't have the black in the center of the eye. This one does. We really want to move this beyond the stock photo. Okay, so I added a little red there. I'm going to take a darker brown. I'm going to go over that. And again, we're just building the color. If you want to go back in and add that dark, you can do that. And usually when I add the dark in its beginning layers, I feather it out. Out from the center, just like that. Okay. Let's start to define this a little bit more. Let's take maybe a dark ochre. Let's lower the opacity just a little. And let's start to add that in there. Let's lower our brush size too to get those little striations in the eye. And don't worry if it looks a little bit too digital. We're going to change that by softening the lines in just a second. We don't want it to look too digital. We want it to look like a painting. We want it to look natural. Okay, something we want to focus on is we want to make sure that we keep this center pretty round, and we want to make sure we keep the iris round. Okay, so that's starting to look good. You can see we have texture in there. Now all we have to do is continue to soften it. Let's see, I'm looking for a nice brown here. I guess we'll try this one here. And we're just going to keep building these little striations of color. There we go. Now let's start adding some highlight. Let's see. Let's try highlighting with the green. Okay, now that I have that done, I'm going to take a dark brown and I'm going to do the edge of the eye. The edge of the eye gets a little bit darker, almost a black. So just like we did in the center, we're going to blend that in from the sides. We don't want just a hard line on the edge. We want everything to transition from one thing to the other. Now what I can do is take my black and we're going to raise the size of a brush. Let's try a 13. It's at 24 and let's try and get that in the center there. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to lower the opacity, and I'm going to get the shadow onto this from the lid. There we go. Now, basically, this dark line that I'm adding now is going to be the base for my eyelashes. Okay, let's clean this up just a bit. I'm going to take this black. I'm going to find myself a very thin brush, smaller than the 5. Let's try a 3. Again, our opacity is down, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a very light, thin line just to make this a little more crisp. Everything's been pretty fuzzy up till now. We don't want things to be too fuzzy. That's a little bit better. Now what I can do is start to define the bottom lid a little bit more. I'm going to take this, let's take this brown here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this lower lid a little definition by giving it just the slightest outline. Just like that. It's a little more defined. Now we see exactly where the bottom lid meets the eyeball. I'm going to take this also up into the pink of the eye there. Now we see where the eyeball meets the flesh. And we're just going to do this. You can see the opacity is only at 6. Very light. Now what we can do is add the highlight to the bottom lid. So what I'm going to do is let's take a light pink. Let's try this one and raise the size of the brush just a little bit. Back to the fuzzy brush. Let's see, the 5. And just lightly, let's see, raise the opacity just a little bit. We're lightly going to give her some highlights. Okay, now you can see what I did was I highlighted a section of that lower lid, okay, with this pink. Now what I want to do, now that I have the pink on there, is I want to come over here to my white. And actually, that's not even a white. That is a very light gray. Let's see. Well, you know what? Let's try that for now. And let's put a white little speck right there. Let's raise this to maybe about 60 and put a little highlight right there. Let's also put a highlight right here on the eye. You can see that right there. And then if we want, we can add just a little bit to the eyeball itself. That is a little bit too bright for me right now, so I'm going to take it down just a notch. Let's see what we can do with this color here, if we can blend that in. Do a little transition. That's better. And then I can add that. Let's see. Let's try slightly darker gray. That highlight to the eye, to the eyeball itself again. Right there. And now if I want a true white, I can click on this little black and white square here. And right now, if I use the brush, the black is going to paint. But I want to switch these so that the white is on top and overlapping the black square. Just like that. That means I'm using the white. And now over the little highlight I did here, I want to put my highest highlight with the white. There we go. Now our eye is almost finished, not quite. What we want to do now is finish up the definition on this lid and get some eyelashes in there. And then we'll move on to the eyebrow and the next eye.